Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I did a video a while back. I entitled something about the worst judge ever. And it was simply a judge I'd been in front of. And she got in trouble with the law and wound up getting chased off the bench. And I've had many people say, Steve, there are worse judges out there. And on some level, yes. But I like to do stories that I know something about when I can. And in this case, I'd been in front of this judge. So she was the worst judge I'd ever been in front of. Let's put it that way. But there's now another case that popped up. Robert and Norman both sent it to me. And it's eerily similar to this case of the woman in Michigan who got chased off the bench. Oklahoma murder conviction tossed after a judge found to be having an affair with the prosecutor. The man will get a new trial after the murder conviction was thrown out. Now, I got this version of the story from Fox News. Stephen Sorace wrote it. I think I've seen it elsewhere, though. But an Oklahoma man's murder conviction has been overturned after it was revealed that the county judge who oversaw his trial was having a relationship with one of the prosecutors, an adult relationship. He and the prosecutor loved each other very much. So the man was convicted in February of murder, and that's a very serious thing, obviously. I'm not making fun of a murder situation or a murder trial, or obviously the fact that a woman in 2013 was murdered is a tragedy. The second tragedy is the fact that the prosecutor and the judge were having an inappropriate relationship and hadn't disclosed that when they should have. So that conviction has now been tossed out because the former Oklahoma County District Judge, Tim Henderson, admitted to having that relationship with a district attorney in his office who helped prosecute the case. And the word relationship is preceded with the word sexual. So yes, it is a sexual relationship which he admitted to having. This is not a gray area, my friends. I've got stories I do once in a while where someone gets accused of something and they get convicted of it and people go, I still don't believe it. Well, he admitted it. So it's kind of hard to defend this one. Now, the man is married, but he resigned in March after 3 female attorneys came forward and accused him of sexual misconduct. And that was reported by the Oklahoman. So 3 female attorneys came forward and alleged sexual misconduct. And he's married, just throwing that in there. And he resigned in March. One of the 3 attorneys was a prosecutor in that case with the murder conviction. Now, she said the judge began sexually abusing her in April of 2016 and continued until July or August 2018, according to the paper. The judge described the relationship as consensual and said he maintained his role as a neutral and detached judicial officer at all times during the case. And the question is whether, while the relationship was active, was he neutral and detached? Because some people complain about their partners. I don't know, he's neutral and detached. My rulings were fair and supported by the evidence and facts presented by the attorneys, he said. However, the scandal may impact even more cases. A different judge threw out the conviction and sentence on Monday, Fox 25 reported, and the murder trial will be done over again, and they're going to put the man back on trial and hope that they can do what they need to do there. So the weird part about this is that there are some very, very high-level concepts that happen in courts. And as everyone knows, one of the most important things about a trial is you want to have a judge who is impartial and neutral. A judge who is just there almost like a referee, okay? They've got no stake in the game, but they're there, and their job is to make sure everything is done properly. But the judge actually does owe a duty, a slightly higher duty, I would argue, for the defendant to get a fair trial, more so than for the prosecutor to get a fair trial. And you might say, but Steve, isn't a fair trial fair all the way around? Yes, it is. But when it comes time to look at these things, The number one concern is that you've got somebody over here who's presumed innocent, and we're running him through this trial. We got to make sure this person gets a fair trial. That is paramount. Whether a prosecutor gets a fair trial is hard to say because they're not on trial. So you got two parties, you got a judge, referee in the middle, and you got somebody who needs to get a fair trial. That person has an attorney, and the attorney represents that person. Over here is a prosecutor who represents the state. The state. And there are a lot of discussions about this also because we can look at the table where the defendant sits, and there's the defendant. When you look at the table for the prosecution, there's usually somebody sitting there as a representative of the state. But it's usually a police officer, a detective, somebody like that. But that person is not the state, okay? That person represents the state. So, when you come into court and you get in front of the judge and a case is proceeding, okay? Judge, defendant, prosecutor / state, okay? It's important that everything is as above board, and again, we've talked about impropriety or the appearance of impropriety, right? So, when the trial starts, as it did in Michigan, which by the way is also a murder trial, or as it did here in Oklahoma, once the trial starts and the judge knows that he's been friendly with the prosecutor behind closed doors, doing what adults do when they love each other very much, but the defense attorney doesn't know that and the defendant doesn't know that, do you think that's something they would like to know? Do you think that's something they would object to? And do you honestly believe, does anyone honestly believe that a judge can have an ongoing relationship of that sort with a prosecutor and not let it affect his rulings one bit? Does anybody believe that? I don't think so. I don't believe it. I find a hard time thinking that anybody can believe it. However, even if you could believe it, let's say for a split second, you say, Steve, no. I think the guy's got a mind that is so ethical and truthful and everything. I think he can do it. Well, impropriety or the appearance of impropriety. So what happens when the jury comes back guilty? We know there were a bunch of rulings had in the case. Some of the rulings went in favor of the prosecutor. If you ask the defendant, he'd say those rulings were wrong. And then you find out, oh, by the way, he's also having an adult relationship with that prosecutor. The whole time. Didn't tell you about it. Now do you have a problem with that conviction? 'Cause I do. So, you often wonder how it is that people do things like this and think two things. They think, one, this isn't wrong. Two, no one will ever find out. And that, to me, is also striking about a story like this. Because workplace relationships are fraught with peril, as I like to say. And this type of relationship is so fraught with peril that it is off the charts. And so if they draw prosecutors at random or how they assign these cases, when this case gets assigned to this prosecutor and it's in front of this judge, somebody's got to reassign that case. And it's going to require one of the people who knows about it stepping forward and just saying there needs to be a reassignment here. Now, whether that's going to raise eyebrows or not, that might be why they didn't request that. They might have thought, well, hey, we can't narc ourselves out. But here's what happens. Now we have a situation where that first trial was wasted. It was wasted. A lot of judicial resources went into that trial. It tied up a courtroom for a period of time. They dragged in witnesses and made the witnesses go through the hassle of coming to court and sitting there waiting to get called and then leaving, getting recalled. It wasted the time of jurors. Jurors sat through an entire trial, getting paid some pittance, sometimes just mileage and a couple bucks per diem. And they sat around for long periods of time reading romance novels, killing the time between getting called back and forth to court. Then they actually went behind closed doors and did their duty by deliberating. They came to a unanimous verdict, announced their verdict, and they were all discharged. And guess what? They read in the paper, oh, Oklahoma murder conviction tossed. And they find out it's because the judge was having an affair with the prosecutor the whole time. And so now people everywhere, but particularly in this area of where this story took place, are asking themselves what other kind of shenanigans are going on in that courthouse. What else is happening? So this is a problem. And so for the judge to say, well, it was a consensual relationship, that's only part of the problem, my friend, because you didn't disclose to the defense that you had a favorable impression of the prosecution going into this trial. That's a problem. And the failure to disclose that is fatal to the case and is probably going to be a lot of trouble for the judge going forward. So it's a strange one, but it's an old story, obviously, because it happens from time to time. I'm saying it's not old with these guys and gals. I'm saying it's simply a case that we hear about from time to time where the judge is having an inappropriate relationship with one of the parties in a case and it doesn't get disclosed. I mean, it's bizarre. So there you go. Oklahoma murder conviction tossed after judge found to be having an affair with a prosecutor. The man will now get a new trial. Stephen Soros wrote this for Fox News, and Robert and Norman both sent it. Thanks a lot, guys. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. The way into the Hall of Success always passes through the Chamber of Decision. You can decide to be a success. Success is deliberate.